Forget everything you thought you knew about global power dynamics. A game-changing alliance between China and Africa is building the world's most ambitious train network, one that never stops, never runs out of power, and is shaking the very foundations of international logistics. This isn't just about trains. It's about a complete economic and strategic overhaul you won't believe. Across Africa, deep in the heart of its red soil and steel veins, something extraordinary is happening. What once began as a colonial network of narrow-gauge tracks is transforming into the world's most advanced, self-sustaining transit grid. The silent network, Africa's iron artery, is awakening. For decades, Africa's railways have carried the scars of history. Built not for Africans but for colonial extraction, these iron lines were designed to move minerals, not people, and profit, not progress. Yet, in the 21st century, a quiet revolution began. From Kenya's standard gauge railway to Ethiopia's Addis-Djibouti line, a new pulse of connectivity started beating. But there was one persistent problem: energy. Diesel shortages, erratic electricity grids, and aging infrastructure all conspired to slow this rebirth. The dream of a truly connected continent was still shackled by dependence on fossil fuels and imported parts. Then came China, and everything changed. China didn't just bring trains, it brought a new kind of energy, an energy that promised to never stop flowing. At first, it looked like another Belt and Road project, another grand Chinese gesture of infrastructure diplomacy. But beneath the surface, something far more revolutionary was taking shape. Engineers from Beijing, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou began introducing technologies that had barely been whispered about in the West. Ultradense solid-state batteries, high-efficiency solar arrays integrated directly into rail cars, and, most shockingly, compact modular reactors, mini nuclear power systems designed to fit beneath or alongside major transport lines. This wasn't just a railway expansion. It was an energy revolution disguised as transportation. The idea was simple but groundbreaking: create a self-sustaining, infinitely powered rail network that could operate without reliance on external grids or fuel imports. Imagine a train that draws its power from solar panels lining its carriages by day and from stored high-density batteries by night. Imagine entire rail lines where the very tracks act as conduits of wireless power, transmitting energy like blood through arteries. Now imagine hundreds of these systems linked across borders, operating in perpetual motion. This is the African Infinite Train Network, and it's already under construction. China calls it the Electric Silk Road, a modern echo of its ancient trade empire. Only this time, it runs through Africa's heart. In regions like Zambia, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, prototype routes are being quietly upgraded with energy harvesting infrastructure. Massive solar fields along the Tazara line now feed directly into onboard battery systems, allowing locomotives to run independently for thousands of kilometers. In Namibia, experimental hydrogen-solar hybrid trains are undergoing trials, using locally produced green hydrogen generated from desert sunlight. And in Kenya, researchers are testing energy transmission rails that allow carriages to recharge on the move, using principles similar to wireless EV charging pads. The scale of this vision is staggering. Every kilometer of track doubles as a power conduit, and every train doubles as a moving battery, storing, distributing, and sharing energy across the network. It's not just transportation, it's a continental energy web. The potential consequences are enormous. With logistics costs slashed and travel times reduced, African goods could move across the continent at speeds that rival Europe or Asia. A shipment of copper from Zambia to a port in Kenya could reach its destination in less than a day. Agricultural produce from inland farms could reach coastal markets before it spoils. Entire regions that were once cut off from trade, landlocked, overlooked, or underdeveloped, would suddenly find themselves plugged into an infinite artery of movement. Factories could be built anywhere energy and transit intersect, creating new industrial zones far from traditional cities. The network would become the skeleton of a new economic body, self-sufficient, resilient, and globally competitive. But it doesn't stop there. When energy becomes infinite, so does opportunity. Imagine rural schools powered by passing trains feeding energy into local microgrids. Imagine medical supply routes that never face fuel shortages again. Imagine new towns forming along the tracks, their economies fueled by constant access to clean electricity. That's the kind of domino effect Africa's infinite train network could unleash. The ripple effect would be nothing short of seismic. For the first time, Africa wouldn't just be catching up, it would be leading. And that terrifies the United States. Washington has long seen Africa as a strategic arena, a place to compete, not to empower. But China's entry has rewritten the rules of engagement. By building energy-independent transport, Beijing has bypassed one of the key levers of Western control: fossil fuel dependency. America's influence has always relied on control over global energy supply chains. Oil, gas, and the petrodollar have been the invisible scaffolding of U.S. global power for decades. But a continent running on infinite local clean power? That breaks the system. It doesn't just decentralize energy, it decentralizes influence. China knows this. That's why it's pouring billions into Africa's rail, energy, and digital infrastructure. Not out of charity, but out of vision. Because whoever controls the movement of goods and energy in the 21st century controls the world. The infinite train network is, in many ways, China's next-generation belt and road, one that doesn't just connect economies but energizes them. It's not about building dependency. It's about embedding systems so deeply that replacing them becomes impossible. And it's working. African leaders, tired of waiting for Western aid and promises, are turning to Beijing's practicality. Why depend on imported diesel when you can run on perpetual solar motion? Why beg for investment when you can generate power and wealth internally? From Nigeria to Angola, the message is clear: the age of waiting is over. Africa is moving, and it's not looking back. But the United States isn't watching quietly. Behind the scenes, intelligence reports warn that China's railway energy integration could give it unprecedented logistical control across the continent. It's not just about trade. It's about mobility during crises, troop transport during peacekeeping, and digital infrastructure embedded within every route. Some analysts even describe the infinite train network as a Trojan horse, a civilian infrastructure masking dual-use potential. But the truth is, this transformation is bigger than any one country's agenda. Because once self-sustaining energy enters the equation, even China's control becomes secondary to Africa's empowerment. What happens when the student becomes the master of motion? When the once colonized continent becomes the world's most energy-efficient trading bloc? We might be witnessing the blueprint for the next global superpower. A superpower built not on war or wealth, but on perpetual movement. In 2030, projections suggest that over 60% of Africa's freight and 40% of its passenger transport could run on renewable, closed-loop rail systems. These trains won't stop to refuel or recharge. They'll recharge each other, wirelessly, dynamically, continuously. Picture 1,000 trains crossing deserts, jungles, and savannas, each one harvesting sunlight, motion, and heat into power, sharing that energy like neurons firing in a massive continental brain. Every station becomes a hub of trade, energy, and data. Every route becomes a digital corridor linking factories, cities, and ports. Even the concept of distance begins to dissolve. Because when energy and motion are infinite, geography loses its limits. Environmental impact? Nearly zero. With no diesel exhaust and no dependence on fossil fuels, the African infinite train network could eliminate millions of tons of CO2 emissions annually. It could turn Africa into the world's largest carbon-neutral transport zone, a continental green miracle. And while the West debates policy, Africa is building practice. The trains are real, the tech is advancing, the stations are rising, and the world is watching, some in awe, others in fear. In Washington, analysts are calling it a soft energy coup. In Brussels, it's a strategic disruption. But in Nairobi, Lagos, and Addis Ababa, it's simply called progress. The silent network is no longer silent. The sound of steel and solar merging into one is the anthem of a new age. China may have provided the spark, but it is Africa that now carries the flame. This network doesn't just transport goods, it transports destiny. From copper mines in Zambia to manufacturing zones in Kenya, from ports in Tanzania to solar hubs in Niger, every piece of this network feeds into a vision greater than itself. A self-reliant, self-powered, self-moving Africa. A continent no longer waiting for the world to bring power, but exporting it through its own innovation. Some call it the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Others, a new energy renaissance. But whatever the label, it represents one truth: the balance of power is shifting. And it's shifting fast. Because when trains never stop, economies never sleep. Trade becomes a pulse, not a schedule. And with every passing day, Africa's pulse grows stronger. Soon, the question won't be whether Africa can sustain itself. It'll be whether the rest of the world can keep up. As energy flows endlessly through its rails, the continent becomes a symbol of what humanity could achieve when technology meets willpower. The infinite train network is more than infrastructure. It's the prototype of a new civilization, one that moves forever forward. And perhaps in that motion lies the next chapter of human progress. Because in this grand game of global power, motion is dominance, energy is freedom, and the tracks of tomorrow are already being laid today. Africa's trains will not just cross the continent. They will cross history. And once they start, they may never stop again.